Evil did not begin in darkness. It began in the light. Before the serpent, before the garden, before the first breath of mankind, he was there. Not a monster, not a warning, but a wonder. His name means the bearer of light. Lucifer, formed in glory, clothed in brilliance. An entity so close to perfection that even the angels themselves were in awe. He was not created to destroy. He was created to shine. He did not hide in the shadows. He stood near the throne. This is not the story of a villain sneaking into mythology. This is the story of something far more terrifying. The fall of a being who was once divine. Not through war, not through violence, but through a single silent question. This story is not only about theology, it is about identity, pride, and the cost of ambition. It is a mirror, not just reflecting heaven, but reflecting ourselves. And it begins, not in fire, but in radiance. Before the rebellion, before the fall, there was only reverence. Lucifer did not claim his place near the throne. He was placed there by divine intention, crafted not in haste, but in brilliance. His creation was not a fleeting thought. It was a masterpiece. The name Lucifer was not just a title. It was a role, a function, a presence that radiated something beyond the mortal realm. He was the morning star, the herald of dawn, the first echo of creation's song. He did not simply exist in heaven. He helped shape it. Descriptions of him are scattered throughout ancient visions and sacred texts, always fragments, as though even the writers dared not capture the full weight of his presence. He gleamed with gems only found in the mythical Eden: agate, emerald, sapphire, gold. His form was not flesh but presence, like a flame that was not hot, a light without shadow. He did not demand reverence. He awakened it. He was not followed through threat, but by allure. The angels looked to him as one would look at a flame, instinctively, beautifully, without resistance. Lucifer was not just a messenger. He was not a warrior. He was not merely a voice in the choir. He was the choir itself. Many believed music flowed through him, not as a performance, but as his very essence. He did not lead worship with words. He was living worship. In some traditions, it is said that he stood in the innermost sanctum of heaven, closer to the throne than even the archangels, one who protected the unknowable. And within that sacred space, he did not just serve, he embodied the harmony of heaven itself. He was not arrogant, not then. He was calm, composed, self-assured, a model of dignity and purpose. Those who followed him did not do so because they were commended, but because they wanted to. They trusted him. They admired him. They loved him. Heaven was not filled with doubt. There was no need to question loyalty when every heart beat in perfect rhythm. And no being moved more gracefully within that rhythm than Lucifer himself. But even perfection carries weight. The higher one stands, the longer their shadow. And the closer to divinity one draws, the more dangerous it becomes to forget that one is not divine. Lucifer did not stumble into darkness. He drifted into it, slowly, silently, almost imperceptibly. Not through action, but through thought. And no one suspected a thing. Not then. How could a star betray the very light it bore? Lucifer's brilliance did not shatter with thunder. It cracked beneath the surface, and when it did, the very structure of heaven trembled. Though no one understood why, it was the smallest thing, a whisper of thought, a gravitational shift in the heart of perfection. That's how every great fall begins, not with revolt, but with a question. It did not begin with wrath. No shouts of challenge, no tremors in heaven, no violent signs of rebellion. It began in silence, in a place unseen, within a single thought. That is what made it so dangerous. A single thought, quiet but fierce. creeping through the consciousness of the most venerated being in existence. Why not me? It was not screamed out loud. It didn't need to be. It echoed inward, not outward, like a stone dropped into still waters. And that ripple, invisible at first, would one day cause the eternal foundations to crack. Lucifer, with all his brilliance, had never questioned his position. Not out of fear, but because harmony required no explanation. The divine order simply existed, until the day it no longer did. That one question opened a tiny gap, imperceptible at first, between the being he was and the being he imagined he could become. He did not resent God. He did not curse the throne. He simply began to ask why he was not sitting upon it. Why should creation revolve around a single will, when the will, his own, burned brightly, admired by all? It was terrifying how worship began to turn inward. Lucifer's light had once shone for others, but now it began to shine in isolation. Pride did not come as arrogance. It came as curiosity. The line between service and power grew blurry. He had carried the weight of reverence with such grace that perhaps he thought the crown would fit him too, or perhaps fit him better. He still sang his hymns, still stood in his place, still shone as the morning star, but the gravity had shifted. The center had moved. The divine will was no longer the center of all things. Now, another force beat quietly beneath the surface. His own will. This was no longer a thought formed in isolation. It became a pattern, a presence. The way he spoke changed, subtly, carefully. His words took on hidden meanings. His glances lingered a little longer. Questions were asked with no answers. No one doubted it. No one had a concept of betrayal. There had never been a fall before, never a crack. And so, the slow unraveling appeared as leadership, vision, inspiration. Lucifer did not turn his back on heaven. Not yet. He was simply becoming more of himself. At least, that's what he believed. And belief is a powerful thing. The tragedy was not that Lucifer fell. The tragedy was that he thought he was rising, ascending, becoming what he was always meant to be. In that way, the seeds of his fall wore a noble guise, cloaked in the language of purpose, of potential. That's how darkness always begins, disguised as light. It flatters, it promises, it sounds like truth, until it no longer is. Heaven did not shatter in an instant. It was eroded, one thought at a time, from the inside. And at the center of it all was a being that once mirrored the divine. Now gazing into his own reflection and wondering why he should reflect anything other than himself. He did not need a declaration. The change had already occurred. He no longer served greatness. He had begun to imagine himself as it. The first war in heaven did not erupt. It unfolded slowly, silently, not with armies or chaos, but with persuasion, with influence. There was no thunder, no burning sky, only conversations, questions, and the silences within a harmony that was once perfect. That was how Lucifer acted, like a breeze through tall grass, causing everything to move while appearing to remain still. He did not need to raise his voice. His words already carried weight. They once stirred the stars. Now they stirred doubt. He did not speak directly against God. That would have been too obvious, too crude. No, he spoke of vision, of expansion, of change, of what heaven could become. And it did not sound like rebellion. It sounded like progress. He asked why only one will should rule when beings like him had carried the weight of worship with such dignity. Why must hierarchy be rigid when he had stood so close to the throne, had embodied its harmony? The questions were never phrased as threats. They were presented as possibilities, and possibilities are contagious. The angels, who followed him, did not see themselves as traitors. They saw themselves as thinkers, visionaries, devotees of a more open heaven. Lucifer gave them what they didn't know they were missing: choice. Not to challenge the divine, but to align with something greater, something more enlightened. At least that's what they believed. They were not drawn into evil. They were drawn to him. That is what made the war so brutal. It did not come from beyond the gates. It came from within, from those closest to the throne, from voices that once made heaven tremble. The division did not begin with violence. It began with belief. By the time heaven realized what was happening, the crack was too wide to heal. The fall did not occur in the moment they were cast out. The fall had begun when belief shifted, when loyalty fractured, when a voice led others away from the center. And then, the sword appeared. Michael did not rise with speeches or persuasion. He did not answer words with words. He rose in silence and resolve. Heaven did not need to explain itself. It simply needed to exist. And in that stillness, a battle ignited, not of flesh, but of essence, of presence. Lucifer now revealed his true nature. No longer the bright morning star, but the dragon, the deceiver, the challenger. His beauty did not change, but his direction had completely shifted. The battle was not clean. It was not romanticized. It was full of sorrow. Heaven trembled, not from the clash, but from its meaning. Brothers turned on brothers. Harmony was shattered, not because God failed, but because Lucifer failed. He had everything: praise, power, proximity. But he had abandoned what made him divine: submission. No matter how bright his fire burned, no matter how intense his belief, it could not surpass the truth. And in the end, he was not defeated by wrath or punishment, but by the very order he had once upheld. There was no glory in this battle, only loss, only the tearing apart of some things that had once belonged to heaven. The morning star fell, not with a scream, but with a silence that echoed through eternity. When heaven rejected him, Lucifer did not vanish. He transformed. The expulsion was not his end, but the beginning of something unrecognizable. What was once divine now became distorted, not destroyed, not erased, but changed like a shattered mirror that still reflects. The fall stripped him of his position, but it did not strip him of his power. He lost his place, but not his presence. That made him more dangerous than ever. He did not descend in flames. He fell in silence. And as he fell, the brilliance that once ignited worship now carried a new weight. He was no longer the morning star. He became the accuser, the adversary, the whisperer, Satan. A title, not a name. A function, not an identity. He no longer stood in the presence of glory. He stood in the shadow of it, sowing doubt where he once spread light. And those angels who followed him, they too fell. But like him, they did not become monsters. They became fragments, echoes of what once was pure. Their loyalty was not for destruction, but for a voice that promised something greater. Now cast out, they were no longer messengers of the divine. They became architects of distortion. Not because they hated heaven, but because they had hoped in the wrong light. Their fall was not loud. It was quiet, a sinking into places no longer blessed. Lucifer, now Satan, did not rise from the fall with fury. He rose with clarity. He knew exactly what he had become, and he accepted it, not with joy, but with purpose. He no longer sought the throne. He sought influence, not through power, but through corruption, subtle, precise, relentless. Where he once sang songs of praise, now he composed symphonies of doubt. His instruments were no longer those of worship. They were ideas, questions, half-truths. He did not want to burn the world. He wanted to twist it. And the most terrifying part was, he did not need to create anything new. He only needed to twist what already existed. A truth bent just a little. A desire misdirected. A purpose rerouted. His brilliance still remained, but now it served a new master, himself. His wrath was no longer fire, but calculation. He understood the human heart better than any beast or storm ever could. He had once stood close to the design itself. He had once heard divine thoughts before time had names. And now, outside of heaven, he would use that knowledge not to build, but to erode. Lucifer's fall did not make him weaker. It made him craftier. He did not lose his voice. He only changed its pitch. And now, that voice echoed not through heaven, but through ideas, culture, temptation. Everywhere certainty could be questioned. He was no longer a being to be seen. He was a force to be felt. The Lightbearer became the deceiver, not because he turned to evil, but because he turned inward. He stopped pointing toward the throne and began pulling others away from it. Not with commands, but with a question. The question that had destroyed him. Why not you? Lucifer's first strike against humanity did not come with thunder or fire. There were no legions, no grand speeches, no violence. Only a garden, a tree, a voice, and a carefully chosen question, timed to perfection. Did God truly say that? That's all, 5 words. No attack, no accusation, just doubt. Subtle, sharp. It didn't need to shout to destroy, it only needed to make Eve question. The serpent was not a terrifying beast. It did not hiss through fangs or slither in threat. It was calm, measured, intelligent. That was what made it so effective. The serpent did not represent chaos. It represented clarity, but twisted. It did not directly contradict God. It reframed, reshaped. A question here, a suggestion there. The issue was never about the fruit. The fruit was the bait. The real weapon was doubt. Eve was not deceived in the way we often think. She was not foolish. She was not reckless. She was curious. That curiosity, designed to help humanity grow, became the very entry point for their undoing. Satan did not need Eve to worship him. He only needed her to shift her belief. That was the core of his strategy. Not domination, but redirection. From harmony with the divine to self-reliance. From faith to doubt. From reverence to autonomy. And Adam, silent nearby, said nothing. His silence echoed louder than any cry. It was not a moment of passionate betrayal. It was a moment of absence. An absence that Lucifer had once felt, a void where purpose was meant to reside. In that moment, Satan did not succeed in corrupting the flesh. He succeeded in severing the bond between creation and creator. What followed was not merely expulsion, it was dissolution. The moment the fruit was picked, the world changed. Not because of a curse, but because of a choice. A choice Lucifer had once made. The question he had once asked, now planted deep in the heart of mankind. Why not me? Why am I not the one to decide what is good and what is evil? Lucifer's genius lies here. He did not need to drag humanity to hell. He only needed to convince them they did not need heaven. He whispered through the structure of the self, planting seeds in the cracks of identity. He did not lie blatantly. He spoke near truths. He wrapped poison in poetry. His voice was not grotesque, it was familiar. It sounded like your own voice. That's why humanity's fall was not just an ancient tragedy. It was a pattern, a formula, whispered out just right. Let it take root, then step back. He did not need to dominate the world with fire and brimstone. He only needed to shift it slightly off its axis. He did not want destruction, he wanted distraction. You will not find him in obvious places. You will find him in the mirror, in the desires you justify, in the decisions you defend, but never quite feel right about. That is how the serpent still speaks. It does not roar, it reasons. And in the space between what you know is true and what you want to be true, he waits. Lucifer's failure did not make him vanish. It made him adapt. Cast out from heaven, severed from divine purpose, he did not build a kingdom with fire. He built a kingdom with influence. Not forged in flame, but woven into culture, thought, perception. He did not need a throne carved from sulfur. He needed hearts, minds, systems. Because control does not begin with conquest. It begins with belief. He does not rule hell with horns and a trident. That is the children's version, the myth, the distraction. The truth is far more terrifying. Lucifer's kingdom is hidden in plain sight. He does not need to be seen. He only needs to be felt. In ambition, in vanity, in the slow decay of meaning. You will not find him in the darkness, but in the spotlight, where pride is disguised as confidence, and the ego is mistaken for identity. His greatest power is not his presence, but his proximity. He works through the systems we trust. He cloaks himself in media, politics, religion, rituals, commerce, not as their enemy, but as their whisperer. He does not smash institutions. He whispers just enough to make them veer off course. He does not destroy truth. He adds just enough fabrication to confuse it. He does not kill purpose. He amplifies it, fractures it, until humanity forgets the original design. He wears many names: Baal, Moloch, Baphomet, Apollyon. But the most dangerous name he carries is the one without a name. Invisibility is his crown. When you think he is far away, that is when he is closest. When you think you see clearly, that is when the distortion is most complete. His kingdom is not material. It is ideological, psychological, cultural. He hides in desire, cloaks himself in fear, weaves through tradition, not to challenge you, but to guide you off course invisibly. He does not need to tempt you with overt evil. He only needs to convince you to serve yourself, to center on your own truth, your own emotions, your own pride, and call it enlightenment. That is how he replaces God, without ever mentioning his name. He knows humanity does not need to be enslaved. They just need to be entertained, comfortable, distracted. He does not offer chains. He offers choices. And within the illusion of choice, his kingdom grows. Lucifer forges his kingdom in stories, each one designed to reshape the world, not as it is, but as he wants you to see it. His influence pulses in movements that worship the self over sacrifice, image over substance, pleasure over purpose. He lives in algorithms and trends, in endless scrolls that keep you too busy to think deeply. He hides in the culture of comparison, where your worth is measured not by character, but by attention. His power lies in redirection. You will not see him demanding worship. You will see him suggesting that nothing is worthy of worship, or worse, that you are the only thing worthy of worship. This is not chaos. This is calculation, generation after generation, systematically. Lucifer does not strike once. He builds slowly, layer by layer, institution by institution. He does not want the throne. He wants your focus. And now, most people give it to him every day without even realizing. In the long echoes of Lucifer's rebellion, only one figure emerged that could not be shaken. Not by brilliance, not by flattery, not by the weight of generations deceived. Jesus Christ did not come to confront Satan with a performance. He came in silence, hunger, humility. While Lucifer built his hidden kingdom through influence and manipulation, Jesus descended into the same world, stripped, poor, unwelcome. That was the force of opposition. not a mirror image of power, but its complete inversion. When Lucifer met Jesus in the wilderness, it was not a battle of strength. It was a test of loyalty. The tempter offered him exactly what he had always craved: recognition. "Turn these stones to bread," he said. "Feed yourself. Use your power. Prove who you are. Again, stand atop the temple and let the angels catch you. Let heaven publicly confirm you." And the final temptation: the kingdoms. All of them offered freely. But the price was a single bow. Each offer revealed the core of Lucifer's kingdom, a structure of ambition, control, validation. It was a trap woven in glamour. But Jesus did not argue. He did not reason with him. He responded with truth, restraint, and refusal. Because true power does not need to prove itself. It simply is. In the wilderness, Lucifer faced something he could not manipulate: a fully living, fully divine human, but completely submissive. The strength of Jesus was not just in resisting temptation, it was in exposing it. He revealed precisely the blueprint Satan uses to trap us: the need for self-reliance, the hunger to be seen, the thirst for control. And by rejecting them all, Jesus shattered the illusion. He did not just oppose Lucifer, he destroyed him. But that was only the beginning. On the cross, Lucifer thought he had won. The Son of God, beaten, mocked, nailed to wood, stripped of dignity, power, breath. It seemed like victory, but the death of Jesus was not a defeat. It was the final reversal of Lucifer's entire kingdom. Because where Satan exalts the self, Jesus emptied himself. Where Satan sowed doubt, Jesus embodied certainty. And in his final breath, Jesus did what no angel, no law, no prophecy could do. He broke the cycle. Lucifer dissolves everything he touches. He divides, distorts, scatters. But Jesus became the scar that heals. Through him, the broken pieces were made whole. Purpose was restored, identity clarified, light no longer manipulated, but anchored. And most importantly, Jesus gave humanity what Lucifer could never counterfeit: redemption. Because Satan's story is about rising, seizing the throne, and finding only expulsion, Jesus' story is about descending into suffering, into the dust, and rising, not alone, but with others. One rises through pride, creating bondage. The other descends in humility, opening the way to freedom. This is not just the destruction of a rebellion. It is the exposing of a lie. That power means control. That glory means recognition. That freedom means doing whatever you want. Jesus revealed a deeper truth: that true power lies in sacrifice, true glory in humility, and true freedom in obedience. Lucifer's reign did not end in fire. It ended in silence. Not the silence of retreat, but of finality. There were no more speeches to deliver, no thrones left to build, no lies to twist. The great deceiver, the one who had convinced angels to follow him, who whispered through the halls of kings and wormed his way into the quiet thoughts of men, now faced an inescapable fate. In the book of Revelation, Satan is not depicted as a ruler of hell, draped in red robes and laughing over a fiery empire. He is bound, thrown into the lake of fire, not as a king, but as a prisoner. His end was not glorious. It was not romanticized. It was pitiful, and that is the point. His power had always been borrowed. His influence was always granted, never owned. And when the true king returned, everything that was borrowed was reclaimed. Lucifer's story did not peak in chaos. It collapsed in justice. The angels who once questioned divine order were finally silenced by it. The entity who once stood near the throne, who allowed a single thought to shatter the peace of heaven, was now severed from all creation. Not because he was powerful, but because his rebellion was unsustainable. False kingdoms do not endure forever. Lies have an expiration date, and even the most seductive voice loses its power when truth finally speaks. There is something haunting about how it ends. No grand gestures, no last-minute twists, only judgment, absolute and irreversible. The dragon, the serpent, the accuser, each title stripped away. What remained was not a mythical villain. It was a warning, a mirror reflecting pride, deception, the longing for self-made glory. What makes Lucifer terrifying is not that he is grotesque. It is that he was us. He is us. When we trade reverence for ambition, when we exchange truth for autonomy, when we choose our own voice over God's, that is the uncomfortable truth most do not wish to face. Satan's end is not just a prophecy. It is a promise revealing how every system he touches, every thought he distorts, every culture he invades, will all crumble with him. The influencers, the manipulators, the empires built on lies, they will not survive when the true word returns. They will all burn, not in vengeance, but in purification. And here is where the second call to awakening must be heard. Not merely to witness judgment, but to prepare for it. The systems Lucifer built still operate quietly, seducing even the most well-intentioned souls into compliance. But you don't have to be trapped in them, because when judgment draws near, clarity becomes priceless. Knowing what is true becomes your greatest weapon. The world will try to blur the lines between truth and narrative, light and shadow, salvation and self-obsession. But the apocalypse leaves no room for ambiguity. The Lamb wins. The serpent is crushed. The counterfeit is consumed by fire. The story of Lucifer is not just a myth from the past. It is a prophecy for the present. His fall was not a single moment. It was a process, a gradual erosion of identity through one singular thought. I could be more than this. And in that thought, you see the spine of every lie that humanity tells itself. That fulfillment lies in control. That truth bends to will. That glory belongs to those who seize it, not those who are given it. But that story, his story, repeats itself every day. Not in heaven, but here. Because the story of Lucifer is not just about a fallen angel. It is about what happens when creation forgets the Creator, when purpose becomes pride, when talent becomes entitlement, when beauty blinds. You do not need to be a fallen angel to fall. You only need to believe you do not need the light, because you are the light. And the world today makes that path all too easy. It tells you that identity is flexible, that morality is subjective, that freedom is doing what you want. But when Lucifer says such things, it is not called liberation. It is called rebellion. The tragedy is not just that he fell, it is that he led others with him. Angels, yes, but now humans. Generations chasing recognition through presence, purpose through applause, truth through trends. You can see his fingerprints in the obsession with image, the addiction to platforms, the worship of influence. It is an old strategy to turn creation inward, to take the gaze away from heaven, to nurture the ego just enough so the soul quietly thirsts. But awareness is a weapon, and once you see the pattern, you can begin to break it. That's why deeper truths no longer spread through institutions. They spread through people, through quiet awakenings, through those who choose to step away from the noise and ask the dangerous question, who told me this is the truth? That is the beginning of freedom. Not more power, but clearer perspective. And that is why our work continues. Not just to tell stories, but to unravel the scripts you've been given. Scripts that look like enlightenment, but lead to emptiness. Lucifer's story is not entertainment. It is a lesson, a warning for every soul that shines brightly. Your light alone is not enough. The question is not whether you burn brightly, but who you burn for. Pride builds altars to the self. Humility tears them down. The angel who became Satan teaches us this, that the fall does not always feel like a fall. Sometimes it feels like rising until it's too late. Do not wait for silence.